At this point, we just gotta face the facts. The PS4 is immortal. Okay, I promise this SSD sale is worth checking out. And why are gamers furious about Red Dead Redemption? How's it going, everyone? Welcome to PSReady. This is the weekend update here on the channel. I'm definitely going to be playing Texas Chainsaw Massacre all weekend. I saw the review scores. I'm just happy for my friends at Gun Media. And I'm also happy that this game literally has zero possibility of going through the lawsuit situation that ended development on Friday the 13th, the game. Basically what happened this time is it's just one guy who has all the rights to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's the only movie that's being pulled in for the game, so they should be good in perpetuity, which is great because this game looks absolutely awesome. Anyway, let me know what you're playing this weekend down in the comments below. Let's get into the first news story, which is all about the PlayStation 4. So recently we've been talking about the PS4 a lot, mainly because we're waiting on Sony to finally give up on the thing and move on to the PS5. With Spider-Man 2 not coming to PS4, it really seemed like, you know, first party at least would be focusing on the PlayStation 5 since it's been out for over 2 years at this point. You'd think they'd want to focus on their brand new console, but as we've seen with games like Jedi Survivor and Resident Evil 4 and a few others, there are ports that are like being back ported now from the PlayStation 5 to the PlayStation 4 happening, and obviously that's not good. It's an extra weird situation with the prospect of the PS5 Pro coming out next year as well, because like, how are they going to sell us on buying a more powerful console when they're not even making games that need the current console that we have right now, outside of a few like Spider-Man 2 and Jedi Survivor? You know, it's a really weird time in gaming because theoretically the PS4 can run these games, like the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 will be on the PS4, but like, should it be running these games, or should Sony be encouraging people to just upgrade to the PlayStation 5? That's what I think they should be doing, at least, because, you know, even if the PS4 does eventually go away, fingers crossed, there is a lot of work being done on a PS4 emulator. And the last time I talked about it, I think it was just an idea, like they were doing a call for developers. Now that work has pretty much wrapped up on the PS3 emulator, you can play basically every game that was ever out on the PS3. It's running games even better. Like, you can play Metal Gear Solid 4 at this point at 60 FPS. So I'd say like the necessity for developers to work on the PS3 emulator has obviously diminished a little bit, so they can move on to the PlayStation 4 emulator. And it seems like they got a lot of people on board because it's really going along fast. As of right now, the emulator supports gamepads, which is good. That's important, right? You need to be able to use a gamepad with an emulator to play the games. It also has full audio support for the games it can play, and it's able to play Sonic Mania at full speed. Now, to be fair, Sonic Mania is like a modern version of the original Sonic games that came out back on like the Sega Genesis, so it's not really too crazy to expect this emulator to be able to run it. But the fact that in just a couple months they've been able to get this thing off the ground and start running games and have full gamepad support and everything like that, I'm hoping that it's going to take a little less time for this emulator to evolve as the PS3 one did, because I remember back when I was in college that PS3 emulator was starting to be worked on, and now I've been out of college for like 8 or 9 years at this point, and it's just wrapping up development. So these things take a long time. Running a game like Sonic Mania isn't necessarily indicative of it taking less time with the PS4 emulator, but obviously it's promising. And there is a lot more desire for a PS4 emulator, mainly because of the games that haven't gotten 60 FPS patches just yet. Bloodborne is the best example of this. It's a game that has terrible frame pacing. It runs at a very low 720p resolution, and people have been able to hack their PlayStation 5s and get the game to run at 60 FPS on there. So the idea of playing this game that everyone wants on PC, but Sony just won't make on PC, through a PS4 emulator, and then you can unlock features like a higher resolution or 60 FPS, that's kind of the dream for people at this point, because for years now, we've heard rumors upon rumors upon rumors about a port of Bloodborne. We got the Demon Souls remake from Bluepoint. Everyone was kind of excited about that, but I mean, like, everyone just kind of wanted that to be Bloodborne. It seems like they might be working on some sort of Bloodborne remaster or remake over there, but they're also working on an original game. And because all these studios are having their games split up, like where they have to make multiple games at each studio now, it seems like it's affecting development times, and we're just gonna have to wait even longer to see something like Bloodborne remastered or remade. So having the possibility of just emulating these games on your PC eventually, it's kind of fixing a problem that Sony is apparently refusing to, which ultimately is good. And it's good for game preservation, which is of course a tricky subject at this point because of all the online only games and games that are being printed to the disc when they're not finished yet. And once you put that disc in your console for the first time, it downloads the game, and then you just use the disc to kind of activate it. Cyberpunk 2077. If you have a PS4 copy of the disc, that's exactly how it works, and a bunch of other games work that way as well. So you can't really preserve games like that. And then when you're talking about Fortnite, there were disc editions of Fortnite, but if you pop that disc in, like, the game has changed so much since that disc came out. So when it comes to game preservation, emulators are an extremely powerful tool, because at the very least, if Sony's never going to remaster Bloodborne or make sure it's playable into the future on like the PS6 or something like that, you can always count on a PS4 emulator to be able to run that game. I'm not gonna lie, when I saw some videos of the PS3 emulator running super well on the Steam Deck, I really wanted to install it, but right around that time is when I heard the announcement of the Metal Gear Master Collection, which there's going to be a future one that does include Metal Gear Solid 4, so I don't really have a reason to emulate the PS3 games on there. But if I could get Infamous 1 and 2, the Resistance trilogy, Killzone 2 and 3 running on my PC, that would definitely be interesting to me, because while those games aren't really going to have the staying power as something like Spider-Man or Uncharted 4, they were a big part of my early gaming moments. Like when I discovered the PlayStation 3, the first games I bought for it were Resistance 2, Uncharted 1 and 2, and Little Big Planet 2. Knowing that I can emulate those games from the PS3, and now I'll be able to emulate my favorite PS4 games going forward with a more powerful PC, that gives me some really solid peace of mind, and it's just cool at the end of the day. Next up here, let's talk about everyone's favorite topic on the channel, SSDs, because there is a massive sale going on right now, and I've been trying to scale it back a little bit. Like, instead of like talking about one SSD that's on sale and saying, maybe it's time to buy it, I've been waiting for a big sale on a whole bunch of SSDs, and that has finally happened. So because the PS5 only has around 600 or so usable gigabytes of storage out of the box, you basically need an SSD, and just speaking personally, I would go for a 2TB one, especially now when they're falling in price so much, but I will definitely read out some of the prices here on 1TB drives just in case you don't have the extra money to throw around. So the first SSD that's on sale is the Crucial P5 Plus 1TB, and that one is only $60. I've never used this drive, but I've heard good things, and it has solid reviews on Amazon. So if you just want a dirt cheap 1TB SSD for your PS5, that one is a really good option. The tried and true classic, the WD Black SNA50X, this one is on sale right now for $100 off. For the 1TB version, it's normally $176, but this one is on sale for $75, which is absolutely crazy. That is insanely cheap for this drive, and this is like the go-to drive for the PS5 just because they have the like license. You can get a licensed version of this drive, and it has a little LED light on it, which you'll never see. But yeah, $75 for a terabyte. Like, I'm gonna pick one of those up just to have around. My favorite drive, which is the Samsung 980 Pro, is also on a super deep discount. This one is normally $230 for a 1TB, but you're able to get it right now for $89. I know that the later versions like the 990 Pro had some issues, but my 980 Pro has been doing absolutely fine for over a year and a half now, so I have no problem recommending this for $89. And hear me out on this one, the WD Black SN850P, which is a 4TB drive, is on sale right now for $300. Now at first that sounds pretty crazy, right? Like, that's more than half of the cost of the PlayStation 5 itself, but you got to consider that like back when these SSDs were starting to be able to be used in the PlayStation 5, a 2TB drive was selling for around $250 or $260. So if you think about it that way, this one's only $50 more than what a full price 2TB drive was just a year ago. So the best part is, if you don't really feel like spending $300 now, you could just wait a year and it'll probably drop down to around $220 or $230. That's the cool thing about storage. The prices drop pretty fast, but if you just want the peace of mind, you want to know that you're always going to have enough space in your PlayStation 5, this is a really good deal on a 4TB drive. And again, it is the brand that's licensed by Sony, which is important to some people. Oh, and then speaking of WD Black, you can get the 2TB version for $139. That's like the best middle ground version. I think it's worth picking it up for that price. It's around double the price of the 1TB drive, but no matter what your budget is, you have some great options here. I really want that 4TB drive, but $300 is not in the cards for me right now with a wedding coming up and everything like that. But man, a year ago, I would have been pretty tempted to pick that up. So yeah, all of those will be linked down in the description. If you haven't picked up an SSD for your PS5, I mean, now is definitely the time. These prices are crazy. All right, this is an absolutely crazy week for gaming, right? Like, we have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game, which looks awesome. We also have Blasphemous 2, which Blasphemous 1 is an incredible Metroidvania. I played it twice back when it came out and then when it got DLC, so I'm really excited for this sequel that kind of came out of nowhere. Also though, we have the re-release of Red Dead Redemption 1 for Nintendo Switch and PS4, which is technically like PS5, and people are not happy about this port. All right, so the first issue with this port is that it's $50. Whether you get it on Switch or you get it on PS4, you're getting the game and the Undead Nightmare version for $50, and it's really just a port of the game. You get a higher resolution than you got on the PS3 PS3 and the Xbox 360. But if you still have your 360 disc for this game and you put it in your Xbox Series X, it'll download a version of the game that already runs at 4K. Back when I was living in LA, I got the Xbox One X right when it came out because it could upscale these Xbox 360 games and make them look better. I went and got Halo Reach and Red Dead Redemption. I paid like $10 each at the time. I'm sure the price may have gone up a little bit just because people want this game after playing Red Dead Redemption 2, but still, $50 versus like $10 is absolutely crazy to ask for that. Just to put this into perspective, this is a game that came out in 2010, and all they're doing is porting it over, and they're also taking out the multiplayer mode from the game, so you're getting less content for $10 less than it originally cost back when it came out in 2010. And it gets even crazier when you remember that Undead Nightmare only cost $10 when it came out. It's a full campaign conversion of the entire map of Red Dead Redemption that adds in zombies and a whole new story, and it only costs $10. But now they're bundling it in with the regular version of Red Dead Redemption, not making any changes outside of smoothing out the frame rate and increasing the resolution, and they're charging $50 for it. That does not seem fair to me. I think the most they should charge for this, the most, is $30. I think that's over what they should be charging for it, but like they could kind of get away with it. Where I realistically think it should be is $20. I think that's totally fair for the port over to the PlayStation Network. Pay for the development cost of getting it up and running on the PS4, which did cost money. It wasn't like a straight conversion or anything like that because the PS3 is so different from the PS4, but still, I would have really appreciated it if they had a PS5 mode that can run it at 60 FPS. Hopefully that comes out down the line after Rockstar kind of responds to this backlash, but I don't know, man. Things are getting weird over at Rockstar. They used to be pumping out games all the time like Midnight Club, Manhunt, Bully, all the Grand Theft Auto trilogy that came out on Xbox and PS2. But when Grand Theft Auto 4 came out, things really started to slow down, and then when Grand Theft Auto 5 and Grand Theft Auto Online came out, that became the sole focus. We got Red Dead Redemption 2 a few years later, and now 10 years later we're allegedly going to get an announcement for GTA 6. So the output is definitely slowed down. I wish we could get back to the old Rockstar that was making stuff like The Warriors and Max Payne 3. At least they have remakes of the first two Max Paynes coming from Remedy, but still, I would appreciate more output from Rockstar, and I would appreciate them go back to actually giving us a value for what we're giving them money for, because $50 for Red Dead Redemption, I understand why people are upset. And next up here, I wanted to talk about this Walking Dead game called Walking Dead Destinies. It's based in the show's universe. It's not like the comic universe that Saints and Sinners and the Telltale Walking Dead games took place in. It's a whole thing that takes place in the show universe, but against all odds, it kind of seems interesting. It's definitely a budget game because it only costs $50, so this would have been a $40 game in the last generation. But the reason I think it sounds interesting is because the way it's set up is that it lets you go through the events of seasons 1 through 4 of The Walking Dead, and you can change them and see how the game would play out. So in the trailer, they heavily focus on Shane dying because, you know, that was a huge plot point in the show, the build up in season 2 to like Rick and Shane's confrontation, because, you know, Shane thought Rick was dead for a while, kind of moved in with his wife, and then they admitted in like season 7 that the baby was definitely Shane's. So yeah, there's a lot of tension between Rick and Shane in the show during season 2, but what if you had it so that Shane killed Rick and then you could see how things play out from there? If I remember correctly, all of season 2 and a little bit of season 3, I think, or maybe all of season 3, I don't remember, was set on Herschel's farm. There's a lot of stuff you could do with Herschel. I think the villain around that time was the governor and everything that happened in the prison. There's going to be 15 playable characters from the show, and the only big downside I would say is A, that the voice acting does not sound good. They definitely didn't get the voice actors from the show or like the actors from the show to come reprise their voices, and B, the graphics just look kind of like a mobile game, and obviously they're only charging $50 for it, so I don't want to knock it too hard, but this is definitely not a top tier graphics looking game. It's more of like a B budget game. But the reason I'm interested in it right now is because I just watched the new Walking Dead show on AMC Plus. It was called Walking Dead Dead City. It was Maggie and Negan having to go to New York City to rescue Maggie's son, which obviously is a cool setup because Negan killed Maggie's husband Glenn, and that's actually when I stopped watching The Walking Dead. I was one of those where I didn't really like the comics after, and I kind of kept up with them, and I liked all the Negan stuff after the whole fallout of what happened with Glenn, but once it happened in the show, I was like, I don't need to go through that again. I picked it back up recently, and I think it's decent. It's nothing great, but yeah, I am interested in this show's universe, and I think the idea of making it a what if game where you can kind of make individual decisions through the first 4 seasons of the show will at least make it worth checking out. Anyway guys, that's all I have for you today. Make sure you let me know what you think down in the comments below, and remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.